The heavy manila envelope sat on the passenger seat of my truck, cold, heavy, and silent like a lead brick. Inside were the signed divorce papers, drafted by a cheap downtown lawyer, waiting for one final signature. I'm Marcus, a black, single-minded, hard-working master carpenter. For 6 long years, I had spent every ounce of my energy, every drop of sweat, and every single day giving everything I had to build a comfortable life for my wife, Nia. But over the last 2 years, our once warm home had transformed into a cold, hollow icebox. She came home past 9 o'clock every single night, her eyes glued to her glowing phone screen, avoiding my touch in the hallways, and barely speaking 2 full sentences to me before collapsing onto the far edge of the bed. I was completely convinced that she was slipping away from me. I thought she had grown ashamed of a man who came home every evening smelling of fresh sawdust, motor oil, and sweat, while she steadily climbed the high-stakes corporate ladder at one of the most elite luxury architectural firms in Atlanta. My pride as a man was completely shattered, and my heart was bleeding silently in the quiet corners of our house. I couldn't bear the suffocating silence anymore. Every night felt like a slow death. Tonight was supposed to be the absolute end of our story. I pulled my old, beat-up pickup truck into the polished underground parking garage of her glass and steel skyscraper in downtown Atlanta at precisely 7:30 in the evening. My plan was simple and painful. Drop off the manila envelope on her desk in person, sign the last page in front of her, in the emotional torture once and for all, and walk away with whatever small shred of dignity I had left in my chest. The grand marble lobby was completely empty at this hour, save for a single-night watchman who paid me no mind. I stepped into the mirrored elevator, pressed the button for the top floor where her executive corner office was located, and watched the illuminated numbers tick upward. My heart was pounding like a heavy sledgehammer against my ribs. The hallway on the top floor was dark and silent, lit only by the soft blue glow of the emergency exit signs. As I rounded the final corner toward her suite, I noticed her heavy frosted glass door was resting slightly ajar, a bright sliver of warm yellow light spilling out onto the plush carpet. I stopped 5 paces away, taking a deep breath, mentally preparing myself to face her eyes one last time. But just as my hand reached toward the heavy brass door handle, a loud, violent slamming sound echoed from inside the room, followed immediately by an aggressive, sharp male voice that made my boots freeze in place. It was her boss, Richard Sterling, the billionaire senior director of the firm, a man known throughout the city for his endless wealth, his ruthlessness, and his toxic arrogance. "You're being completely unreasonable, Nia," Sterling shouted, his tone dripping with condescension and authority. "Look at what's on the table. I've offered you an exclusive senior partnership, a $300,000 annual raise, and the premier corner office on the penthouse floor. All you have to do is sign the standard exclusivity contract and agree to handle the late-night client trips with me." I stood completely frozen in the shadowed hallway, my breath catching in my throat, my fingers tightening around the rough paper of the manila envelope until my knuckles turned white. Nia's voice answered him, quiet, remarkably calm, but carrying a razor-sharp edge of steel that I hadn't heard in her voice for years. "I have already told you 3 separate times, Mr. Sterling. I am not signing an exclusivity clause that forces me to travel with you alone to private resorts. And I'm certainly not staying in this office past 6 o'clock ever again." Sterling laughed, a bitter, mocking sound that sent a surge of boiling rage straight into my veins. "Don't be a foolish girl, Nia," Sterling sneered, his heavy footsteps pacing closer toward her desk. "Look at your personal life. You are working yourself into an early grave, trying to pay off that massive residential mortgage and those overwhelming back taxes on your property. Your husband is just a basic neighborhood carpenter, for God's sake. What can a guy like that actually offer a woman like you? A lifetime of financial struggle and dusty boots? He can't give you luxury. He can't protect your future or elevate your status. Drop the dead weight, sign the partnership deal, and let a real man take care of you." The entire office went dead silent. Outside in the dark hallway, the air felt thin and suffocating. My heart stopped beating in my chest. I stood alone in the shadows, waiting with a heavy dread for her answer, bracing my soul for the final, devastating blow that would confirm every single insecurity that had been tearing me apart for 2 years. Inside the room, the sound of Nia's high heels clicked firmly against the dark hardwood floor as she stood up from her chair. "Do not ever speak about my husband in that tone again," Nia said, her voice dropping into a quiet, dangerous, icy register that gave me instant chills down my spine. "Oh, please spare me the righteous drama, Nia," Sterling mocked loudly. "The man comes home covered in dirt, wearing cheap work gear. He doesn't belong in our elite world, and you know it. He's an anchor dragging down your potential. You don't know a single thing about my husband, Richard," Nia snapped back, her voice suddenly trembling with raw, overwhelming emotion. "My husband wakes up at 4 o'clock in the freezing morning every single day of his life, working 14-hour shifts until his hands bleed and his knuckles swell, just so I had the financial freedom to pursue my dream of becoming a licensed architect. He built every single piece of furniture in our home with his own hands, carving every inch out of pure love for me." Tears began to sting the backs of my eyes in the pitch-black hallway as I pressed my back against the wall, listening to my wife defend my honor with everything she had. "For 2 long years," Nia continued, her voice rising with fierce, unstoppable passion, "Marcus has been secretly taking brutal night shifts at industrial construction sites, desperately hiding how utterly exhausted he is so that I wouldn't worry about our household expenses. And do you want to know why I've been staying in this office late every night, Mr. Sterling? Do you want to know why I've been pushing myself to the absolute brink of collapse?" Sterling didn't offer a single word in reply. Because 6 months ago, Marcus was secretly diagnosed with a severe, degenerative spinal nerve condition from years of unyielding physical labor. Nia wept softly, the sound of her tears ripping straight through the core of my soul. "He never told me about it. He had the doctor's letters in his truck, but I found his medical records. The specialist told him he needs a $200,000 emergency surgery, or he will lose the ability to walk within 5 years. My husband is literally sacrificing his own physical body to protect me, and he refuses to ask for help because of his incredible pride as a provider." I choked back a ragged sob in the dark, my entire 6'2" frame trembling uncontrollably. I had kept that terrifying diagnosis a complete secret from her for months, carrying the silent agony alone every night so she wouldn't abandon her corporate aspirations. I had no idea she had found out. "I spent every single extra hour in this office," Nia said, her voice transformation from weeping into a roaring, unstoppable power, "working on independent residential blueprints late at night. Yesterday afternoon, I officially sold my first 3 custom architectural designs to a major national land developer for $650,000. I paid off our entire house mortgage this morning, and I transferred the full payment for Marcus's spinal surgery directly to the private clinic at noon today." Sterling gasped loudly, completely stunned into silence. "My husband is not dirt, Richard," Nia declared, her voice echoing through the grand penthouse, sweet like thunder rolling over a valley. "My husband is a king. He is the strongest, most honorable, most selfless man I have ever known in my life. I would throw away every single dollar, every corporate title, and every luxury in this entire city before I ever let an arrogant, predatory snake like you disrespect the man who gave me his life. I resigned from this firm, Sterling, effective right this second." Inside the office, the crisp, violent sound of thick paper ripping echoed through the room. Nia was tearing up her multi-million-dollar corporate partnership agreement right in front of her boss's pale face. "You crazy, ungrateful woman," Sterling yelled, his tone shifting into pure, desperate panic. He stepped forward, his heavy leather shoes squeaking against the floor as he grabbed her wrist roughly. "You can't walk out on me after everything I've invested in you. I will blackball your name across the entire country. You'll never work in this industry again." Before Sterling could finish his sentence, I threw my heavy frame directly against the heavy wooden door, slamming it wide open with a violent, deafening crash. The heavy oak door collided with the drywall, shattering the lock mechanism. Sterling jumped back with a sharp gasp of terror, releasing Mia's wrist instantly as a 6'2", broad-shouldered black man in a dusty work jacket and steel-toed boots stepped into the bright, warm light of the office. I didn't look at the billionaire. I didn't even acknowledge his existence. My eyes locked straight on my wife. Nia's eyes went wide as saucers, tears streaming freely down her flushed cheeks, her soft lips trembling in absolute shock as she saw me standing in the doorway, clutching the crumpled manila envelope in my heavy, calloused hand. I walked right past her grand mahogany desk, stepping directly up to Sterling until I was standing less than an inch from his nose. The arrogant billionaire shrank back against his leather armchair, turning pale as a sheet, beads of nervous sweat breaking out across his forehead under the intense, deadly calm of my gaze. "If you ever lay a single finger on my wife again," I whispered, my voice dropping into a low, terrifying vibration that rattled the glass windows of the skyscraper, "they will not find enough pieces of you to fill a shoebox." Sterling swallowed hard, his throat dry, trembling from head to toe. He held both of his hands up in complete surrender, paralyzed with fear, not daring to utter a single word or take a breath. I slowly turned my back on him, pulled the signed divorce papers out of the manila envelope, and dropped them straight into the silver trash can beside her desk without looking down. Then I walked around the desk to Nia. She looked down at the paper scraps in the trash can, then looked up into my face, the sudden realization of what I had come there to do dawning in her soft eyes. "Marcus," she choked out, her voice breaking into a whisper. "Were those—" I didn't let her finish the sentence. I reached out with both arms, wrapped my heavy, calloused hands around her small waist, and lifted her off her feet, pulling her tightly against my chest. Nia buried her face into the crook of my neck, weeping uncontrollably with sheer relief, her arms wrapping tightly around my shoulders like she was clinging to life itself, promising never to let go. "I thought I was losing you, baby," I whispered deep in her hair, my own tears falling freely down my cheeks and soaking in her silk collar. "I thought you were ashamed of who I was." Nia pulled her head back slightly, holding my face in her soft, warm hands, staring deep into my eyes with a love so fierce, so pure, and so deep that it made my chest ache with joy. "I could never, ever be ashamed of you, Marcus," she choked out through her tears, a radiant, beautiful smile breaking across her face. "You are my strength, you are my hero, and you are my entire world." I smiled, leaning down to press a deep, passionate, possessive kiss onto her lips, a kiss that carried 6 years of shared sacrifice, unyielding devotion, and a silent promise that no force on this earth would ever come between us again. I reached down, picked up her heavy leather briefcase with one hand, kept my other arm wrapped securely around my wife's waist, and walked out of that high-rise office into the cool night air, leaving the trembling billionaire and his hollow corporate empire behind in the dark. We had built our life on genuine love, quiet sacrifice, and unbreakable honor, and there wasn't enough money or power in the world to ever tear us apart.